If sin had a face, it would probably look like the way she smiled at me that first morning in my father's kitchen. If shame had a heartbeat, it would be the thunder in my chest when I realized I wanted her smile all to myself. Her name was Elena, 26. My father's brand new wife. My stepmother. I was 22, freshly graduated, carrying resentment like a backpack I couldn't put down. I had hated my father for years for leaving mom, for never being around, for thinking money could heal wounds love had carved. And then suddenly there she was. Elena. Beautiful, graceful, completely out of place in his world of boardrooms and whiskey. I told myself she married him for money, that it was just another story of a young woman caught in the web of an older man's wealth. But the first time I caught her crying in the garden, clutching a book like it was the only friend she had, I knew there was something else. Something real. The truth is, I never planned to fall in love with her. Who in their right mind would? It started quietly. The summer I came back home, the air was heavy with Texas heat and awkward silence. My father was gone most days, business trips, that stretched into nights at hotels I never dared ask about. Elena was always there, though. She cooked with music playing low, something soft and foreign that filled the empty mansion with life. I remember standing by the kitchen door one afternoon, watching her hum to herself while chopping tomatoes. She moved like a dancer, light and precise, her bare feet patting softly on the cool marble. And when she turned and saw me, her smile was so unguarded that it felt like I walked in on something too private. "Hungry?" she asked, holding up a slice of tomato. I nodded, and for reasons I couldn't explain, my throat felt too tight to speak. From then on, it was little moments. Sharing coffee at midnight. Sitting on the back porch when the cicadas sang too loud. Talking about books, about music, about everything my father never seemed interested in. I realized she was lonely, desperately so. And loneliness, I've learned, has a way of binding two people together faster than love ever could. But here's the thing about forbidden things. They burn brighter. One night, after a thunderstorm that rattled the house, we ended up on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket. She laughed at something I said, he can't even remember what, and the sound was so free, so young, that for a second she wasn't my father's wife, she was just Elena. When her laughter faded, her eyes stayed on mine. The kind of gaze that lasts too long, that lingers like a question neither of us dared to answer. I should have looked away. I should have moved. Instead I whispered, "You don't look happy with him." Her breath caught. "And you? You look at me like I'm not supposed to exist." The silence that followed was unbearable. And then she stood, breaking the moment like a glass dropped on the floor, shattering it before it could become something dangerous. But the truth was already there, humming beneath our skin. The hardest part wasn't resisting her, it was pretending not to notice how she resisted me. The stolen glances. The way her fingers would brush against mine when she handed me a plate. The way she lingered near the door of my room, as if she wanted to say something but never did. And then came the night that broke us both. It was late, nearly 2 in the morning. My father was in New York for meetings. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs. Elena was already there, sitting at the dining table with a glass of wine, staring at nothing. She didn't notice me at first. But when she did, her lips curved in a sad smile. "Want some?" she asked, pushing the bottle toward me. We drank. We talked. About her hometown in New Mexico, about how she once wanted to be an artist, about how she met my father at some fundraiser she barely remembered. By the time the second bottle was half empty, the air between us was thick, charged. I said her name. Just her name. And she looked at me like I was the first person to ever say it right. The kiss was inevitable. Slow. Hesitant. Tasting of wine and guilt. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "This is wrong," she whispered. "I know," I said, and kissed her again. The days after were a blur of tension. We tried to act normal, but normal had shattered. Every room in the house felt smaller. Every silence heavier. My father returned, oblivious, and I couldn't look at him without feeling the weight of betrayal pressing into my ribs. But I couldn't stop. We couldn't stop. Elena and I became experts in stolen moments. Fingers brushing under the dinner table. Secret meetings in the garden after dark. Kisses that left us trembling, always followed by the same whispered fear. What are we doing? And yet every time the answer was the same. We can't help it. It all came to a head one evening when my father announced we'd be hosting a dinner party. Important guests. His business partners. Elena was the perfect hostess, smiling, graceful, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I watched from across the room, my chest burning. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet again, I found her in the kitchen, washing dishes like her life depended on it. "You looked beautiful tonight," I said. She froze, water dripping from her hands. Slowly she turned, and the look in her eyes nearly undid me. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. "But it's true." Her lip trembled. "Do you know what would happen if he found out? He would destroy us both." I stepped closer, my voice shaking. "Then why do you keep looking at me like you want me as much as I want you?" The plate slipped from her hands, crashing into the sink. She covered her face, sobbing. And in that moment I realized the truth. She wasn't just afraid of him. She was afraid of herself, of the way her heart was betraying her just as much as mine was betraying me. And that's when everything began to unravel. Secrets don't stay buried for long. They grow restless, like wolves pacing behind a locked gate, waiting for the chance to escape. And with Elena and me, the truth clawed at us every single day. The morning after that night in the kitchen, we barely spoke. She avoided my eyes, moving around the house with a kind of desperate precision, as if order could hold back chaos. I wanted to reach out, to touch her, to tell her that I didn't regret it. But every time I opened my mouth, fear clamped it shut. And then came my father's gaze. He was sharper than I gave him credit for. He noticed things, the way I looked too long at her, the way she flinched when he touched her shoulder. He said nothing, but his eyes narrowed, and that silence felt more dangerous than any words. One evening he took me out to dinner. Just the two of us. The restaurant was loud, filled with laughter and clinking glasses, but between us stretched a heavy quiet. "You don't like her, do you?" he asked finally, cutting into his steak. I nearly choked on my drink. "What?" "Elena," he said casually, like her name was nothing more than another business deal. "You two don't get along." I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "It's not that. We're just different." He studied me, eyes cold, unreadable. "Good. Because I don't need you making her uncomfortable. She's young. She's still adjusting. Don't complicate things." I nodded, my pulse racing. If only he knew. If only he guessed how complicated things already were. Back at the house, Elena was waiting. She stood by the window, her silhouette lit by the glow of the streetlight outside. When I walked in, she turned and I saw the relief in her eyes. "How was dinner?" she asked softly. I shrugged, moving closer. "He suspects something." Her breath hitched. "Did he say anything?" "No. But I can feel it." She closed her eyes, pressing her hand to her forehead. "This is dangerous, too dangerous. We should stop." The words cut through me like glass, but I forced myself to ask, "Do you want to stop?" Her silence was the loudest answer of all. And then, despite everything, despite the fear, she kissed me. We were reckless after that. Reckless in the way only people drowning in love and guilt can be. Stolen touches in hallways. Whispered words in the dark. Nights where the air between us burned so hot that I thought it would consume us both. But the more we gave in, the more impossible it became to hide. My father's trips grew shorter, his questions sharper, and the mansion, once a cage for Elena's loneliness, became a trap for our secret. One night, I woke to the sound of her voice. Muffled, urgent. I crept to the staircase and saw her in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I thought I could. Booth deserves better than this. They both do." My heart dropped. Who was she talking to? My father? A friend? Someone who knew? When she hung up, she sat on the couch, burying her face in her hands. And I stood there in the shadows, torn between running to her and running away. The next morning, she avoided me again. I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered her in the garden, the scent of roses heavy in the air. "Who were you talking to last night?" I demanded. Her eyes widened. "You were listening?" "I had to," I said, voice breaking. "I thought you were leaving." "I thought," she grabbed my hand, squeezing it hard. "I was talking to my sister." I told her everything. I couldn't keep it in. Panic surged through me. Everything. Her gaze softened. "Not your name. Never your name. Just, how wrong it is. How right it feels. How it's tearing me apart. Her confession unraveled me. I pulled her close, burying my face in her hair. I can't lose you, I whispered. You already have me, she said, and for a moment the world felt less cruel. But happiness doesn't last in stories like ours. 2 weeks later the storm came. It was a Sunday afternoon. My father had returned early from a trip, his mood foul, his temper sharp. The house was filled with tension, every step heavy with the threat of something breaking. I was in the kitchen when it happened. He and Elena were in the study, their voices rising, the argument spilling down the hallway. You're distant, he accused. You don't even look at me anymore. Her reply was quiet but firm. Maybe because you don't see me either. The sound of something slamming against the desk echoed through the walls. I froze, my heart pounding. And then his voice, low and dangerous. Is there someone else? Silence. Deadly silence. And then her voice shaking, barely a whisper. No, but the pause before it was too long. Too telling. When I peeked into the study, his eyes were wild, his jaw clenched. And for the first time I was certain he knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the truth of who, but he knew there was someone. And that someone was me. That night, Elena came to my room. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling. He suspects, she whispered. He doesn't say it, but I can feel it. He's watching me. Watching us. I pulled her inside, closing the door behind her. We'll be careful. Her eyes filled with tears. Careful isn't enough anymore. We're playing with fire, and it's only a matter of time before it burns us alive. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. Then let it burn. I'd rather be ashes with you than safe without you. She kissed me then, desperate, fierce, like it was the last time. And maybe it was. The breaking point came the next day. My father invited me to his office downtown. It wasn't unusual like to parade me around his colleagues, pretending we were closer than we really were. But that day his tone was different. Harder. When I walked in, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sliding one across the desk. You're grown now, he said. Old enough for me to speak plain. I sat uneasy. What's this about? He leaned back, studying me. I know you think I'm blind, that I don't see things. But I do. And what I see is betrayal. My blood ran cold. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. I opened my mouth, but no words came. He leaned forward, his voice low, dangerous. Stay away from her. Whatever foolishness is in your head, end it. She's my wife. Do you understand me? I forced myself to nod, though my hands shook under the table. But as I left his office, one thought burned through me. He didn't say what he would do if I didn't. When I returned home that night, Elena was waiting on the porch. Her face lit when she saw me, then quickly darkened when she read the truth in my eyes. He knows, she whispered. I nodded. Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. Then this is the end. I shook my head, pulling her close. No. This is the beginning. She stared at me, torn between hope and terror. If we run, we'll lose everything. Then let's lose it, I said. Let's lose it all, as long as I don't lose you. For a moment silence hung between us, broken only by the sound of crickets in the warm night air. And then she whispered, okay. But behind the window a shadow moved. And I knew the storm had only just begun. If love is a crime, then that night was the moment we were caught red-handed, if not by eyes, then by fate itself. The shadow behind the window wasn't a trick of the light. My father had been watching us. I saw him move, saw the flicker of rage across his face before he turned away. He didn't come outside. He didn't scream. He didn't demand answers. That silence was worse than any explosion. Elena's grip on my hand tightened, her knuckles white. He saw us, she whispered, voice cracking. I swallowed hard. Then there's no hiding anymore. Her tears slid down her cheeks. He'll destroy me. You don't know what he's capable of. But I did know. And that was what terrified me. The house became unbearable after that. My father's eyes followed us, sharp and calculating, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. He didn't touch her. He didn't touch me. But the weight of his silence pressed on us until we could barely breathe. Every dinner was a battlefield. Forks scraping plates, glasses clinking too loud. He asked Elena about her day in a tone so clipped it was almost a threat. He asked me about work, about friends, about anything that would force me to lie. And beneath it all, his eyes never softened. One night, after dinner, he stood abruptly. "Elena." "My study." "Now." She froze, her fork halfway to her lips. I shot up from my seat. "Why?" His gaze cut to me, sharp enough to wound. "Because she's my wife, and I want a word with her." Elena's hand trembled as she set down her fork. She rose, casting one last look at me, a silent plea, "Don't follow." But I did. The door to the study was closed, their voices muffled but harsh. "You're making a fool of me," my father hissed. "I'm not." Elena's voice shook. "You're imagining things. Don't lie to me." His tone dropped, colder, more dangerous. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at her. The way she looks at you." There was a long, brittle silence. Then, his voice low, venomous. "Do you love her?" I pressed my ear harder against the wood, heart pounding. Elena's reply came broken, torn from somewhere deep. "I didn't mean to." My father's roar rattled the walls. "Answer me." "Yes," she cried out, sobbing. "Yes, I love her." The crash of glass shattered the moment. I shoved the door open. Elena stood against the desk, tears streaking her face. My father loomed over her, his fist clenched, a whiskey glass shattered at his feet. His face was twisted with fury. "Get away from her," I said, my voice shaking but firm. His eyes snapped to me. "You." He spat the word like poison. "My own daughter." The disgust in his voice sliced through me deeper than any blade. For a moment no one moved. The room hummed with rage and heartbreak. Then he pointed at me, his hand trembling. "Get out of my house. Both of you." Elena gasped. "What?" "You heard me," he growled. "You're dead to me. Both of you." Tears blurred my vision, but my hand found hers. "Fine," I whispered. "We don't need you." We ran. Out of the study, out of the house, into the night. The air was thick, heavy with the promise of rain. We didn't stop until we reached the car, my hands fumbling for the keys. Behind us, the porch light flicked on. My father stood there, a silhouette in the doorway, watching us with a look I'll never forget, betrayal, rage, and something else I couldn't name. I started the engine. Elena's sobs filled the car. What have we done? The first drops of rain splattered against the windshield. Chosen each other, I said. And then I drove. The motel we ended up in was the kind that smelled like cigarette smoke and stale coffee, but it was shelter. We collapsed on the bed, our bodies trembling from adrenaline and grief. For a long time we said nothing. Just lay there, clinging to each other like the world was ending. Finally, Elena whispered, "I ruined everything." I pulled back, cupping her face. "No. He ruined everything when he made you feel like you were nothing more than his possession. We didn't ruin it. We found something real." Her eyes searched mine, raw and searching. "Do you really believe that?" "With everything I have," I said. She kissed me then, hard and desperate, pouring every ounce of fear and love into it. And for a few hours in that dingy motel room we forgot the storm outside. But storms always find you. The next morning my phone buzzed with messages, missed calls from friends, from family. Whispers had already spread. My father wasn't subtle when he wanted to punish someone. "He'll come after me," Elena said, pacing the small room. "He'll drag my name through the dirt. He'll take everything. Then we'll fight," I said, though my voice shook. She turned on me, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand. He has power, money, connections. He'll crush us." I stood, grabbing her shoulders. "Then let him. Let him try. We'll make our own life, Elena. Away from him. Away from all of it." Her lip trembled. "And if I'm not strong enough?" I kissed her forehead. "Then I'll be strong enough for both of us." We spent days in hiding, moving from motel to motel. Elena barely slept, jumping at every sound. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was unraveling too. Then one afternoon she disappeared. I came back from grabbing food to find the room empty, her bag gone. Panic slammed into me. I searched everywhere, called her phone 100 times, but it went straight to voicemail. Hours later she returned. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "Where were you?" I demanded. She sat on the bed, burying her face in her hands. I went to see him. My heart dropped. What? I had to, she whispered. I thought maybe if I talked to him, if I begged, he'd let us go. And I asked, my voice sharp with fear. Her shoulders shook. He said if I stayed away from you, he'd leave you alone. That he'd make sure your life wasn't ruined. I knelt in front of her, grabbing her hands. And what did you say? She lifted her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I couldn't answer. Because I can't choose him over you. Even if it means destroying us both. That was the moment I knew. There was no going back. We weren't just running from him anymore. We were running towards something terrifying, something uncertain but ours. And as the rain poured outside, drowning out the world, Elena whispered the words that bound us together forever. If we burn together. And I believed her. Happy endings are never easy. They are not gifts. They are battles you win one painful day at a time. By the time the dust settled, weeks had passed since we ran from the mansion. My father did exactly what Elena feared, dragged her name through whispers, painted her as a manipulative girl who had bewitched his daughter. He called me reckless, broken, ungrateful. Family turned their backs. Friends stopped calling. For a while it felt like we were exiles in our own lives. But we survived. We worked small jobs, shared cheap apartments with creaky floors and leaky faucets. Elena picked up painting again, her hands stained with colors that finally looked like freedom instead of guilt. I found work at a library, and for the first time in my life, books weren't just an escape, they were a way to build something steady. We built a life brick by fragile brick. And yet, the shadows of the past lingered. Some nights, Elena would wake shaking, convinced she heard my father's voice. Some mornings I'd scroll through news about him, his new deals, his new scandals, wondering if he ever thought about us. If he ever regretted what he lost. But slowly the ache dulled. Slowly, the fire that once threatened to consume us began to warm us instead. It was a crisp autumn evening when everything changed again. We were sitting on the porch of the small house we'd finally managed to rent, watching the sun dip below the trees. The world felt softer, gentler somehow. Elena leaned her head on my shoulder, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my hand. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. I turned to her, startled. What? Us, she whispered. All the pain we caused. The bridges we burned. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened? I studied her, the woman who had once been untouchable, forbidden. A symbol of everything I wasn't allowed to want. Now she was here beside me, her smile tired but real, her love steady. Never, I said firmly. I regret the hurt, but I don't regret you. I never will. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. Good. Because I don't regret you either. We kissed then, slow and deep, as the sky turned shades of gold and purple. And in that moment I knew we had finally outrun the storm. Months later a letter arrived. It was from my father. The envelope sat between us on the kitchen table, heavy with years of silence. My hand shook as I opened it. His handwriting was sharp, impatient, but the words inside, they weren't what I expected. I was angry. I was betrayed. But I've had time to think. You chose each other, and nothing I do will change that. I won't forgive you, not completely. But I won't fight you anymore. Live your life. Do better than I did. Elena's hand covered mine as I read. Her eyes were wide, her lips trembling. Does this mean? It means he's letting go, I said, though part of me doubted he ever truly would. But even that small mercy felt like freedom. Years passed. Seasons changed. Our love remained. We traveled. We laughed. We fought and made up. We lived the kind of life that seemed impossible back in that mansion, when every kiss felt like a crime. And one spring afternoon, as blossoms fell around us in a quiet park, Elena knelt on one knee, her hands trembling as she held out a small silver ring. I don't care about the past, she whispered, tears in her eyes. I only care about us. Will you marry me? My breath caught, my heart pounding. For a moment, the weight of everything we'd endured pressed down on meth secrets, the fights, the pain. And then it lifted, replaced by joy so fierce it felt like light breaking through. Yes, I said, pulling her up, kissing her through my tears. 1,000 times, yes. The wedding was small. No grand mansion, no father walking me down the aisle. Just a garden filled with friends who had stayed, With laughter and music and flowers, Elena had arranged herself. As she walked toward me, radiant in a simple dress, I realized something profound. We hadn't just fallen in love. We had fought for it. We had bled for it. And that made it stronger than anything that tried to tear us apart. When we exchanged vows, her hands were steady in mine. "From the moment I met you," she whispered. "My heart knew the truth even when my head tried to deny it. You are my home." And in front of everyone who mattered, I promised her forever. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if it was fate or madness that led us here. But when I wake up each morning with Elena beside me, her hair tangled against my pillow, her smile soft with sleep, I know the answer. It was love. Pure, stubborn, relentless love. The kind that doesn't fade even when the world calls it wrong. The kind that turns ruin into rebirth. The kind that saves you even as it breaks you first. And as the sun rises on the life we built, I know one thing with absolute certainty. I never expected my heart to fall for my father's young wife. But I'm glad it did. Because it gave me her. And she was worth everything. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.